tell you what, apparently the Cervelo test team were designing their kit.
Yeah.
One of the years down the road. I know, we'll get him. Go, let's have white shorts for Lloyd.
You're having me on. Incredible.
Anyway, welcome to Ask GC Anything. It is the show where you can do just that.
You can.
You can do it in the comments or across social media using the hashtag TalkBack, which is going to be on screen. Now, first up this week, we've got this one from Raphael Arpace. Raphael says, hashtag TalkBack, good use of the hashtag. I'm quite new to the sport and I don't have the necessary safety on the streets of my hometown, which happens to be Rio de Janeiro, to train outside very often. I also don't have the money to buy an indoor trainer yet. Is it possible to track my evolution on a spinning bike or in a gym? Also, the bike doesn't have any digital tracker, not even for speed or distance. Matt, what do you reckon?
Well, firstly, thanks very much for getting in touch, Rafa. You're clearly faced with a little bit of a challenge there, without a shadow of a doubt. But one thing you could do to track your progress in the absence of anything else is to get a heart rate monitor. Now, years ago they were pretty expensive. Now you can get them for just a few bucks a piece, and a really worthy investment in the absence of a home trainer or power meter, etc. Now, basically you can monitor your heart rate using resistance levels. So if you've got a set resistance level you're used to, as you get fitter, your heart rate should actually get lower, and that will give you a reasonable gauge of how you're doing.
Definitely. And Raphael, if you are looking for some great fitness sessions to train along to, we've got a bunch of workouts, including this one, which is our 40-minute high-intensity, intense cycle training workout.
That is a bit of a... And we've got some more spin sessions coming very soon as well, so keep your eye out for those.
So it's 45 up, 15 down. One more notch of resistance. Good rolling beat.
Next up, we have a couple of questions on a very similar theme from, firstly, Canal XX Action XX. Cracking name there, Canal XX Action XX. I'm still a teenager, but already training and compete, and I have the dream of being a pro cyclist. What is the way? And next up.
And also, we've got this question from Big Dog. I'm 16 and winning races, so how do I get sponsored? Well, I think that the best way to attract the eyes of teams and shops or clubs who do sponsor young riders is just to get out there, be positive, get good results, and just make a name for yourself as someone who enjoys cycling, helps out around events, and gets good results. You want to be seen as a positive person and a positive cyclist.
Definitely, and at events as well, I know it might be a little bit counterintuitive sometimes. Also go and ask questions to managers. If there's teams that you've got your eye on, that you know nurture kind of young talent, don't be afraid to go up and speak to managers, ask for a little bit of advice. And that will always set you in good stead as well, because people that ask advice, generally the kind of people that teams will want to be working with. But also, the key to getting yourself in the right shape, especially as a youngster eyeing a potential professional career, is to keep yourself mentally and physically rested and fresh so you can be in the best form possible for the races, basically. But yeah, if you perform well at a national level, you will be noticed. And alternatively, Tom, they could watch this, couldn't they?
I think they should watch this as well. This is 7 tips for young cyclists.
Yeah, not alternatively, as well as.
It's a great idea to learn from as many people and places as you can. So online or from books, magazines, more experienced local riders, perhaps even a YouTube channel, although nothing immediately springs to mind. But anyway, gathering knowledge will ultimately help you get better quicker.
Time now for the rapid fire round. Take it away, Lasty.
This one, Matt, comes from In-House Council Co. Please answer my question. I can't live without your opinion. If you could be a spectator at one 2017 Spring Classic next spring, which one would you choose and why?
Paris-Roubaix. For me, it's just absolutely fantastic. It's the queen of the monuments. You just got to go. If there's one place you could go to as a bike fan, as a spectator, get yourself the Roubaix Velodrome. It's absolutely wonderful.
This is take 2. Matt stole my answer from the first round. I'm going to say Trobro-Léon, which many of you may not have heard of. It is a small one-day on and off-road race in Brittany. It's in an absolutely stunning location. It's a brutal race and it's just great to watch and be a part of.
Take note, it is absolutely correct. That is a wonderful race. Next up, this from John Boutel. Good stuff, video suggestion. Training only with a heart monitor for those that can't afford a power meter. Well, the answer to that question is we have one called How to Train with a Heart Rate Monitor.
And John, if you didn't know, links to every video that we mentioned in each episode of Ask GCN are down in the description, so do check them out.
You got to pronounce this one.
Okay, Aaron Mastrogiacomo.
Brilliant.
GCN tweet, is there a way to prevent pimples and skin impurities under my helmet, especially at contact points? Hashtag talkback.
Well, it's clearly an issue in relation to washing your helmet. It could be that you have particularly oily skin. Everybody's different, of course, but people always wash the outside of their helmet. You need to not neglect the inside of your helmet. So basically take out the foam pads, rinse them with some soap, rinse them through thoroughly as well, make sure you get all the residue out, and hopefully that should help solve the problem.
It should do, and again, Aaron, we have actually done a video on that very subject, and there is a link to it in the description. Benjamin McMahon, my knees don't track straight up and down, but move 3 to 4 inches laterally on the upstroke. Is this problematic, and any fixes? I think whether or not it's problematic, Benjamin, really depends on whether you have any pain or not. But I think it's definitely worth putting a couple of fixes in. Perhaps, Matt, you've got some suggestions?
Yeah, many of you who've watched our videos might note that my left leg tracks quite considerably actually. It's really exaggerated and actually goes over the top tube. In years gone by, I used to actually knock the top tube and causing my leg to bleed. Now I've since had sort of shims inserted inside just underneath the shoe plate. And also I've got a different left insert than I have on the right hand side to essentially cant my knee to the left hand side and straighten it up. So, or you go for a bike fit. If you can't afford that, there's quite a lot of advice online in relation to strengthen your glutes, which can actually affect the alignment of your leg as well.
Definitely use it as an opportunity to get stronger. Okay, the silly daddy has asked a question that I think is going to cause us a bit of trouble, Matt. He says, assuming your bike is already in good working order, what pre-ride checks and maintenance do you always do? And I'll go first to admit that I don't really have a set routine. Because I do all of my own bike maintenance, I tend to know if there's an issue, and I tend to have solved it before I go out on a ride. So I can't think that I've got anything too regular, although perhaps, you know, if I've driven to a shoot location or something on GCN, I'll definitely double check my quick releases.
Definitely a good one. I mean, I think it's the reverse here. Basically, it's when I come home, I'll make sure there's no cuts in my tyres, I'll make sure my tyres are pumped up. Generally, things are all kind of tight. The other thing that I will do is always make sure I have a relatively clean chain and it's lubricated and that my tyres are pumped up as well. So a good routine to get into is, rather than do things in the morning, is do things on the day previous to your ride.
Stay on top, but just make sure critical bolts, quick releases, that sort of stuff is always tight. Final question, and this is a name pronunciation I'm struggling with, Matt, which is a Quack Sai Jr.
Ah, that's a good effort. He who asks, I see pros riding with earpieces, presumably to talk with coaches or other crew team members, but do they ever just listen to their favourite music? I don't really know the answer to that, but being an ex-pro, I never listened to music. I did hear some pretty poor jokes and crude jokes from a mechanic once, but I don't really think that happens. Do you, Tom?
No, because you've got to somehow pipe out 9 people's favourite music, and music tastes across Europe and America differ somewhat.
Extremely. Well, that was the reasonably rapid fire round over. So next up, we're going to put it onto the small ring with this question from Jonas QZ, who asks, after a cold, how long should I wait to train again? Well, it's a very good question, and we've all been there on many, many occasions. And Jonas, first and foremost, it will depend on the severity of your cold. If you've got just a very light sniffle, quite often, as long as you back off the intensity of your training, you can still ride through. And certainly, if you're coughing up some rather nasty green or yellow stuff, then I definitely would avoid riding and wait till that clears.
A good measure of how ill you are, Jonas, is often your resting heart rate. So it's important to build up some sort of benchmark so to actually know what your resting heart rate is. But once you've got that, if you think if it's 10 or so beats above what you'd expect, the chances are that something is probably up with your health, so you should back off a bit and maybe not train. Another important thing is if it's below the neck, definitely don't train. So any chesty colds, chest infections, steer well clear. And finally, another thing to remember is that days off taken because you're ill don't equal rest days. So bear that in mind. You haven't had a rest week because you've been off your bike for a week due to illness. But there's plenty more good advice in Matt's video behind me. Doctor's approval. There we go.
Definitely. The common mistake to make is to wait a couple of weeks and train anyway, regardless of how you feel. It's easy to worry about the miles that you're perhaps missing out on and how much riding your mates are doing. But don't. Play the long game, see a doctor, and get to the bottom of the problem.
Finally, Matt, we've got this question from John Mack. John says, quick question. I had a big crash last March whilst descending and ended up having shoulder surgery. I've never been as fit or as fast as I am now. However, I'm kind of held back by a huge uneasiness when descending. I can feel myself tense up and grab more brake than is necessary. Do you guys have any tips for building confidence when cornering or when heading downhill? Cheers and keep up the good work, John Mack. Thanks, John. First of all, hope the recovery is going well. And this question does come around very often because, let's face it, It's fun to descend, it's fun to push a bit on the descents, and an inevitable result of that is that some of us are going to crash from time to time. And people do bounce back and deal with this sort of stuff differently. Some people are straight back at it, but others, like yourselves, do take a bit more time to build up confidence, and that's just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key here is to build up your confidence slowly but surely, and don't push yourself too quickly. And one thing to remind yourself about that is really important is, in the first instance, as you've alluded to, you could descend and you could corner. So you're not actually asking yourself to do something that you couldn't do in the first instance. So remind yourself that as you've done it in the past, there will be a time when you can do it again. And also, when you're making progress, give yourself a bit of a pat on the back, because you kind of deserve it and you will make more progress. So don't be afraid to give yourself a little bit of praise. Remind yourself of what the kind of abilities you've had and the skills you've had in the past, but just take things step by step. Now, we could actually, I don't know, gesture and point you in the direction of a couple of descending videos we've done and also cornering videos, but we think this one will be a little bit more suitable, and it's how to build your cycling confidence.
And the same applies to descending. Find one local to you that doesn't strike fear into your heart, and then become familiar with it, riding it a few times so you get used to the way your bike handles at higher speed. And then from there you can build up to other descents that are faster, perhaps more technical, and then you will just increase your confidence.
Good strong sock game, actually. Quite pleased with the black and white combination. But as ever, this show has drawn to a close, but thank you very much indeed for all of your questions. And do keep them coming using the hashtag TalkBack with a CK at the end of back on all social media platforms or in the comment section down below. But for something a little bit different, how about this? The GCN London Tourist Challenge, bike v bus v cab. Click up here.
And if you want to find out 5 things that you almost certainly don't know about cycling, click right there. And to subscribe, click on that. And to check out our shop, there's a link on screen too.
All the links.
Thumbs up.